everyone, I'm Sarah and this is Budgetsew, where we create stylish, fashionable looks as inexpensively as possible. Today, we're doing a sew along to the pants of New Look 6203, View I. New Look 6203 is a pattern for evening separates, including tops, tunics, skirts, and pants. The top and tunic have the mandarin collar and a side-angled neck opening. The mandarin is this small, close-fitting stand-up collar, usually about 3 to 4 centimeters high, with edges that don't quite meet at the center front. Some of the tops and tunics have frog fasteners, which are fabric closures, usually of ornamental braiding, and consist of a button and a loop, which fasten the front of the garment. The pants and bias-cut skirt have an elastic waist. This pattern was a gift from my mom. She bought it for me for 25 cents along with 5 other patterns at the Look NL6203 thrift store. The link to the video with those patterns is right here at the top of the screen. This tunic pattern reminds me of a similar pattern that I made up about 15 years ago. I think it's a simplicity pattern. I used a deep red fabric with gold designs and black frog closures. I loved the tunic so much that the fabric began to disintegrate, so I cut off the frog closures to be used for a future garment. The suggested fabrics for this pattern are crepe, crepe back satin, jacquards, laundered silks rayons, brocades, satin, shantung, and velvet. Now, I'm not making my pants out of any of those lovely fabrics. Instead, I'm using a navy blue queen size sheet that I bought from Value Village thrift stores for $6.99. The sheet is 65% cotton and 40% polyester, so these will be comfortable pants for around the house. Since this is a queen size sheet, I was able to squeeze out a second pair of pants, Simplicity 8999, which I'll show you in a future sew along. I chose to make up the pants in a size 14 based on the measurements on the pattern pieces rather than the measurements on the pattern envelope. The pattern piece measurements are the finished garment measurements that include the amount of ease. I found that some of the newer patterns that I had made up in my usual size 16 were too large, even though the pattern envelope shows my measurements as a size 16. This is my first size 14 pattern that I've ever made, so I made no adjustments to the pattern pieces. This is how I laid out my pattern pieces. There are 16 pattern pieces total for New Look 6203, but the pants use only 2 pieces, number 14 for the front and 15 for the back. There are no pockets or waistband. The additional pieces you see here are for Simplicity 8999. When I laid out the pattern pieces, I lined up the bottom of the pants with the hemmed edge of the sheet. I did not unpick any hems. The pattern calls for 5/8 of an inch or 1.5 centimeter hem, but I'm hoping these pants will be the perfect length, but if they're not, I'll be able to lengthen, yes lengthen, or shorten them easily. First, I pinned the front of the pants to the back at the inner leg seams, matching the notches in small dots. I mark all my patterns with thread rather than with chalk or a washable fabric marker. This way the mark won't disappear or fade over time. It will be removed only when I cut off the thread. Then I sewed the front of the pants to the back, stretching the back to fit and removing the pins as I sewed. I always try to remove the pins so I don't sew over them. If you continuously run over the pins, you'll need to take your sewing machine to a repair shop for a realignment, which then increases your maintenance costs. Plus, you'll be without a sewing machine for a week while they fix it. My mom bought a vintage sewing machine just like mine from a garage sale, and when she got it home, she realized that it no longer did the zigzag stitch. After watching a few videos on YouTube, she realized this was because the previous owner sewed over pins and the needle was not lined up correctly to go down and pick up the bobbin thread. Another great reason to remove the pins is because it reduces needle and thread breakage. With the right sides together, I pinned the center seam, matching the inner leg seams and notches. I cut my notches outward into the fabric rather than cut them inwards into the seam allowance or marking them with chalk or thread. However, I do use chalk to mark the front and back pieces. I wrote NLF for New Look front and NLB for New Look back so that I didn't confuse them with the Simplicity pieces. This is my first time using a sheet to make clothing. Previously, I've used white sheets as curtain liners, but that's it. In the comments section, tell me about your experience with sewing with sheets. I'd love to hear about them. In the upcoming weeks, I'll be posting 3 more sew-alongs from sheets, so stay tuned to Budgetsew. I used a lot of pins on this seam so that it wouldn't slip. I wanted all 4 pieces to line up correctly at the center. This seam should be stitched and then reinforced for strength. Then I sewed the center seam. To reinforce the seam, I stitched a second time over the first stitching. I'm using a sharp size 12/80 needle, which is sized for general sewing threads such as all-purpose polyester. My next step was to trim the center seam to 1/4 inch or 6 millimeters. I did this very slowly and carefully so that I did not cut into the pants, which I've done before. Usually I trim the center seam of the pants by cutting little triangles or notches out of the fabric, but this time I trimmed the entire seam to 1/4 inch. Then I pinned the front to the back at the side seams. Before I continue with the sew-along, please share this video with your friends and family. I'd love to help others sew and upcycle on a budget and troubleshoot their favorite patterns. I also love sharing the treasure that I find at thrift shops. If you'd like to see more from Budgetsew, please subscribe and make sure that the bell is on so you receive a notification when I release a new video. Follow me on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at Budgetsew. Then I sewed the front to the back at the side seams. I chose an emerald green 100% polyester thread for this project instead of navy blue. I think that the bold green will make the pants look designer. This is my first time using a different colored thread to sew a project, and I like how it looks. I think that I'll use a red thread to sew my pair of dark blue denim jeans. Then I top stitched the side seams. This wasn't in the instructions, but I thought that I would see how it turned out. The top stitching really shows off the beautiful green thread on the navy blue fabric. I love it. I think that I might do this more often on other patterns. My next step was the waistband. I folded over 1 inch or 2.5 centimeters on the upper edge of the inside, forming a casing for the elastic. Then I folded under 1/4 inch or 6 millimeters on the raw edge. This completely encloses the raw edge. The instructions recommend machine basting or using fusible web to anchor the seam allowance to keep the elastic from getting stuck. But since I top stitched the outer leg seam and trimmed the center seam, I skipped this step. I pinned all around the waistband and left an opening to insert the elastic. Then I stitched as close to the lower edge of the casing as I could, leaving an opening to insert the elastic. A few times in the past, I forgot to leave an opening and had to unpick part of my sewing, so if you're making elastic waist pants, remember to leave an opening. Luckily for me, I remembered this time. I cut a piece of elastic to fit my waist, plus 1 inch or 2.5 centimeters. I pinned one end of the elastic close to the opening of the casing and then used a safety pin on the other end of the elastic to insert it into the casing. Once I pushed the safety pin all the way through, I overlapped the ends of the elastic and held them together in place with a safety pin. Then I tried on the pants to adjust the fit of the elastic. My next step was to stitch the ends of the elastic together securely. I tend to overdo this step because I stitch again and again over the ends of the elastic, but I've never had them come apart. Then I sewed the casing closed. After that, I distributed the fullness evenly so that it wasn't all bunched to one side. My next step was to hem the pants. To find my perfect length, I tried on the pants and pinned the depth of the hem that I wanted. Don't you love the green top stitching? It really pops. It's gorgeous. My last step was to stitch the hems. The instructions recommended slip stitching the hem, but because I top stitched the side seams, I used a straight stitch with the emerald green thread for the hem. Here are the finished pants. I love these pants, and they were a very easy sew. I think that these are the best fitting pants I've ever made. To complete the look, I'm wearing a Karen Scott t-shirt and a Lord & Taylor cashmere cardigan, both from the Hudson's Bay Company. I bought the Liz Claiborne purse from Value Village thrift store and then repaired the handles. The link to the handbag handle repair video is right here at the top of the screen. The brand new Sperry Top slider shoes are also from Value Village. My necklace came from the Salvation Army charity shop. And the earrings were in a Ziploc bag full of jewelry that I bought for $5 at a church Christmas bazaar. I hope you enjoyed my sew along to New Look 6203. Please like and share this video with your friends and family. And if you'd like to see more from Budgetsew, please subscribe. And if you'd like to stay up to date with Budgetsew, follow me on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at Budgetsew. Thanks for watching. See you next time.